Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Gezer. I'm a former career diplomat from the Turkish Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I am currently a foreign policy director at the Turkey Economic Policy Foundation. And I have the distinct honor today to host this panel on Turkey-Egypt relations. Now, before we actually start the panel, and I leave the floor to our panelists, I would like the collaborators of today, the Ankara Policy Center, Diplomeds, and Global Trade Forum representatives to briefly introduce themselves as well as their institutions. Ambassador Ceylan from Ankara Policy Center, would you be kind enough to start, sir?
Thank you very much indeed, Gulru. And I should also like to extend my thanks to GTF and Diplomats for taking part in this webinar as three collaborators. Certainly, I'm honored to thank the two prominent ambassadors, Ambassador Göktürk and Ambassador Salaheldin, and also a leading scholar, Dalia Ziada, to participate in this seminar. I will not forget you, Gulru. Thank you for moderating this important webinar. And last but not least, the audience that will take part in this webinar. Ankara Policy Center is an association that comprises in the main retired Turkish diplomats with on the average 40 years of diplomatic career. And it focuses on different aspects of Turkish foreign and security policy. So with this brief introduction, let me pass the floor back to you, Gulru. And once again, thanks everyone.
Thank you, Ambassador Ceylan. Now, Dr. Goran, would you be kind enough to introduce Diplomats, please?
Thank you. It is a pleasure being here for me, for Camille Limon, my colleague at Diplomeds. Diplomeds is the Council for Mediterranean Diplomacy. It's a policy group based in the Netherlands that brings together experts, retired ambassadors, think tank leaders, policy analysts from all parts of the Mediterranean who come together to look at the region, to try and improve interstate relations, to advance inclusivity and regional cooperation and conflict resolution. And over the last year and a half, we've been working a team of experts within Diplomat with a regional outlook on Turkey-Egypt approachment, how to advance it, what does the process look like, what recommendation could be set on the table for its success, what are the regional implications, the constructive one that could be advanced following that. And we are very glad to be able to share here some of the insights that have been published by Dalia Ziada and Pinar and Ambassador Salaheldin and others on what we have achieved throughout this year and a half. And glad to say that this relationship is actually moving forward and already has some regional implication, as we just saw now between Israel and Turkey and Egypt, finding a mechanism to try and help those injured in Gaza. So thank you for the cooperation, and I wish all the speakers and the audience a successful event.
Okay, and last but not least, Mr. Şafak Herdem, can I ask you to first introduce yourself and then GTF, please?
Thank you, Gulru. I am Şafak Herdem, the founding president of the GTF, which is an industrial think tank based in Istanbul that is dedicated to enhancing the Turkish market's global presence and readiness for the next industrial revolution. Today, we explore the organic relationship between Egypt and Turkey, assessing the potential for mutual economic growth and regional impact. We have gathered in collaboration with Ankara Policy Center and Diplomats, esteemed ambassadors and experts to discuss economic and strategic dimensions of this relationship. Their insights and experiences are invaluable in shaping our understanding of the opportunities and the challenges ahead. Thank you for joining us in this important conversation.
Well, thank you very much again for contributing and making this event happen to all three of you and your institutions. Now, I will like to start the panel, and I would like to ask each of our panelists to talk for 15 minutes in the first round, And then we might have a second round where each panelist can comment on each other's views for like 5 more minutes. And then we will open the floor to a Q&A session. I would like to ask our participants to send the questions and also indicate who they are posing the questions to. So firstly, I would like to start with Ambassador Göktürk. Ambassador Göktürk worked, and I will briefly, Mr. Ambassador, if you allow me, I'll briefly introduce you. Ambassador Göktürk worked in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs between 1979 and 2019. He served in our embassies in Athens, in Tehran. He was our Consul General in Frankfurt. He was also our ambassador to Egypt, of course, Singapore, and Norway. He also served as Deputy Director General for Middle Eastern Affairs and Director General for Policy Planning. Ambassador Göktürk holds a bachelor degree from the famous Ankara University. Ambassador, please, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gulru. It is in fact a privilege for me to be among this distinguished group of panelists. I shall try to be brief. I may not consume the total 15 minutes. I shall make a brief review of our bilateral relations background and where we may be headed from this point on. Well, the significance of the Turkish-Egyptian relations cannot be overstated. Each country's share and regional heft present a wide spectrum of opportunities for cooperation. I witnessed this firsthand while I had the privilege to serve as ambassador in Cairo in the latter half of the 2000s. Our economic cooperation grew exponentially, political dialogue intensified and deepened, and cultural bonds became more evident. For a while, it looked as if we were destined to stay that way. I oversaw 6 presidential and no less than a dozen foreign minister visits during my 4-year tenure. I lost count of the exchanges of other official as well as business delegations. We developed such a close coordination and continuous dialogue that in the process, we forgot about formal representations. They simply became unnecessary. I always saw my profession from a historical and sociological perspective. Narratives speak more than their words worth. Having also served in Athens and Tehran, I understand well that one's identity in regard with others solidifies through historical interaction. Egypt remained an Ottoman holding after the end of the 18th century only in name, because an independent-minded Ottoman governor would soon realize the futility of submitting to Istanbul when Egypt represented so much more on its own. If Egypt today stands out in its region with its deeper-rooted institutional framework and social vibrancy, it is the result of its own efforts to both challenge and harness foreign factors in its drive for independent statehood. Turkey, too, emerged as a nation-state after the disintegration of the Ottoman Empire. The young republic represented the antithesis of imperial domination. Sovereign equality became the cornerstone of its relations. Ottoman legacy in the region did not vanish, but Turkey's new disposition was clear. Let me share with you a brief excerpt from the book of famous Turkish writer and thinker in the early Republican era, Falih Rıfkı Atay. He was, in fact, the chief of cabinet of Cemal Pasha, the general who led the Ottoman army through Syria and Palestine down to the Suez Canal in an attempt to take it back from the British. And this is the quotation. The Turkish energy can produce miracles only when it is harnessed in an articulated and orderly manner. This energy, which was wasted in the desire to hoist the flag of a totally neglected homeland to Cairo, was never employed for the purpose of making the deserted Anatolia a rich and prosperous homeland. The Turk was utilized, prized, and glorified in war and abundant in peace. There is an inescapable geopolitical factor that renders our bilateral relations more gravitational than many others. We both connect continents, embrace Eastern Mediterranean and the Levant. It is not an accident of history that ancient Egypt and the Hittites, the reigning power in Anatolia then, produced the first written peace treaty more than 3 millennia ago, and in today's Syria. Almost ever since, peace prevailed in the wider region when the two were bound together, and incessant conflicts characterized the same geography when they remained apart. As imperial times are happily over, it is now incumbent upon us as sovereign partners to impress on the region as mutual generators of peace and stability. So, if this is the template, then how we found ourselves in such a downgraded state of relations through the past decade will be a legitimate question. There have been downturns before. They deserve retrospective reflection, and their setting was national consolidation and Cold War. This time around, the downward spiral began owing to two interacting factors. The popular uprisings across the Arab world, where Egypt again demonstrated its centrality, shook the entire region. For a while, governments remained on their back feet. Then, in Egypt, elections brought a former political outcast to the helm. For a while, matters hung in balance. Meanwhile, in Turkey, the government was showing increasing signs of reverting to its Islamist past. It accordingly misinterpreted the Arab popular wave as a boon for its ideological mates, whereas it was a broader cry for dignified citizenship, freedom, and better bread. The rest is history. Ideological fervor blinded the Turkish government. It internalized the turn of events first in Egypt and then elsewhere, and established an existential connection between the Brotherhood's plight in the region and its own standing at home. Moreover, the Gezi Park demonstrations coincided with the removal of Morsi from power in Egypt, and the leadership in Turkey would never recover from that syndrome. Its impact on our bilateral relations has been devastating. The subsequent years saw a surge in government's assertive policies towards regional neighbors, all connected to boosting its domestic image. This resulted in Turkey's growing isolation. Egypt, in turn, pursued a rigorous policy to isolate Turkey in this process. The Turkish government thus decided to change tack from 2021 on, in earnest, abandoning ideological overtones and confrontational discourse. The normalization with Egypt has been part of this process. We know it took some time and several ups and downs before the ambassadors could take up their positions in our respective capitals. The two main sticking points have been the state of Muslim Brotherhood's presence and activities in Turkey, and the extent of Turkey's collaboration with the government in Libya's west. Throughout the past decade, our bilateral economic relations have not been particularly affected, although the prevalence of a better atmosphere would have boosted them further. The restoration of full diplomatic representation does not automatically translate into close relations as before. It will require the rebuilding of trust, which depends on the actual performance of both sides. I anticipate a cooler than temperate atmosphere for some time to come. Egypt will likely test the Turkish government's new position if the government's position is merely an expression born out of necessity or a genuine re-evaluation of approach. In turn, Turkey will try to understand if Egypt's recent alignments in the broader region are meant to be to its exclusion. Regional dynamics also influence the path forward. The war in Syria and Turkey's involvement therein drew scorn from many in the region, including Egypt. Turkey now has some convincing to do that it differentiates between its border security and its wider presence in Syria. It has already signaled that it has no interest in staying once Damascus assumes full control, that is also preventing all causes of cross-border harassment and infiltration. The war in Gaza again highlighted the volatility of the uneasy calm in the region. Turkey and Egypt do not have conflicting views on the question of Palestine. Otherwise, their roles are both quantitatively and qualitatively different. Turkey is a non-party. Egypt is a former party to the conflict, is a frontline state, and has a peace treaty with Israel, which contains provisions also on the issue of Palestine. Equally crucially, Egypt is a leading player in the Arab world, and which makes its role central in the management of the conflict. Turkey's place is more related to the wider context, where it can contribute to the easing of tensions and the eventual settlement of the issue, stabilizing factor. For that to happen, though, Turkey needs to return to its time-honored position of remaining outside the fray and maintaining the lines of communications with all parties concerned open and sound. Modern Turkey's foreign policy had two golden rules for this region. First one, do not be involved in inter-Arab issues. Two, do not interfere in their domestic affairs. The Turkish government now is apparently seeing the merit in returning to this path. Our two countries should again show the wisdom to keep their relations clear of others' influence. To achieve and maintain this, both sides need to contain their divergences within the boundaries of the issues in question. And I will stop here and wish to listen to other panelists where we can, which I shall be able to interact. Thank you.
Ambassador, thank you very much. Now, before I give the floor to Ambassador Salaheldin, I would like to also briefly introduce him. He has served for 40 years as an Egyptian diplomat in the Egyptian Foreign Ministry, and he served as ambassador, of course, to Turkey and the Czech Republic. He was also assistant foreign minister. I think my voice is being echoed. He has extensive experience in the US, and he obtained a PhD in political science from Charles University, Prague, with a focus on Egyptian foreign policy. He now lectures on Arab and American affairs at the Egyptian Foreign Ministry's Diplomatic Institute, and he's also policy support group member at Diplomeds. Ambassador, thank you, by the way, for being able to participate in this event in your tight schedule. I know you're traveling. You're in our beautiful city, Istanbul. Welcome to Turkey. Ahlan wa sahlan. The floor is yours, Ambassador.
Thank you, Gulru. I'm very happy to be participating in this timely webinar when I am back to my favorite city, Istanbul, after 10 years of absence. And I like very much the way Ambassador Şafak portrayed our two countries' relationship throughout history up to the present moment. This echo is definitely not from me because I am on the headphones. So I think if
Yes,
everyone,
yes, I just, with all due respect, I muted Ambassador Göktürk's microphone because it's coming from him, I guess. With all due respect, Ambassador Salaheldin.
That's okay. That's okay. So without any prior coordination, I wholeheartedly agree with every word Ambassador Şafak said about our two countries' relationship. And I would like to focus more on the way forward, as I fully agree with his description and analysis of the background. The way forward on the bilateral level, I guess we have great potential, the two countries have, in the economic area. Our trade today has doubled since I left Turkey. It was $5 billion total trade. Today it stands at $10 billion, of which they're almost equally distributed between imports and exports of both countries. So 5 each. But out of the 5 billion Egyptian exports, we have $2 billion worth of gas. And interestingly enough, most of this gas actually is not Egyptian gas. It's Israeli gas liquefied in Egypt, in EDCO and the MEETA facilities, and re-exported to Western Europe, and part of it is Turkey. So that gives you an idea about how the two countries' cooperation and relation can reflect positively, in my opinion, on the regional cooperation in the wider context. So the Turkish isolation in the Eastern Mediterranean could simply go away because of the cooperation of the two countries. I remember the Turkish generals back in 2012, when we had mutual naval exercises between the two countries, they used to be very proud of the fact that the strongest two navies in the Eastern Mediterranean are working together. This is the idea that I would like to promote looking into the future, that these two countries would look to themselves as the largest two nations in the Eastern Mediterranean. Together, we are more than 1/3 of the population of the Middle East. Together, we are about $1.5 trillion of GDP. And together, we constitute probably the biggest military force in the region. So together, I think these two countries, if they agree, I think can impact security, stability, and peace in the region. So economically, back to the economics, I think Turkish investments in Egypt could easily triple in the next 2 years, because there are two areas where Turkish businesses are booming in Egypt. Textile is one, and automotives. And in these two areas, there are great potentials for Turkish businesses to have cooperation and partnership, even with our public sector, in order to revive the Egyptian textile industry. And I think there are great potentials there, and already Turkish businesses started to recognize it. We are waiting for President Erdogan to come and visit Egypt and present his counterpart with the Turkish electric car that he is gifting to other leaders in the region. But it's actually very symbolic of what could be done together also, because it is not only the Egyptian market of 105 million Egyptians, but via all the trade agreements that Egypt has with African nations, with Israel, with Europe, with the Arab nations, Turkish businesses in Egypt are able to export more than half of their production in Egypt to countries like, for example, the United States, using what we call qualified industrialized zones, where we have about 10% of Israeli products going into this joint production, and they would have free of customs access to the US market, for example. They have the same free access because they are produced in Egypt, to 900 million or more Africans and about 300 million Arabs. That's economic. When it comes to regional cooperation, I think Ambassador Şafak rightly mentioned that Libya is a good test. Is a very good test because it is immediately neighboring Egypt. It's a source of constant national security threat to our western borders, and Turkey can play definitely a very influential role in reaching an agreement between East and West in Libya, to have one central government in control of Libya. And again, the war in Ukraine proved that Libya is very vital to the Western European economies because of its oil resources and because of its gas resources and otherwise. And also because of the fact that Libya is now the transit point for illegal immigration that is really flooding countries like Greece and Italy. So not only from Libya, but from all nations in Africa, and even some Egyptians who would like to flee the country, but they cannot do it from Egypt because we are sealing our shores in the face of illegal immigration. So they go to Libya and do it there. So there too, Egypt and Turkey can work together. And I am already seeing good signs of coordination between the two governments. Beyond resolving the political differences, the two countries and the two nations can also work in Libya constructively. For example, their construction companies, their IT companies, Libya has a lot of potentials for joint Turkish-Egyptian businesses and joint ventures. And I don't see this explored enough. And if we widen our circle of examination to the whole continent in Africa, I see similar potential cooperation in areas in East Africa, like Somalia, where Turkey actually was pioneer in establishing its presence in Somalia and helping the Somalis try to develop some kind of infrastructure and education, etc., and health. And I think Egyptian-Turkish cooperation there has great potential. I also believe that Turkey can play a constructive role to persuade Ethiopia to reach an agreement with Egypt on the Grand Renaissance Dam, on the Ethiopian Grand Renaissance Dam, that is denying Egypt a great part of its existing water resources. And if Turkey is successful in doing so, it would gain a lot of Egyptian recognition and confidence in the area of confidence building that Ambassador Şafak referred to, and I agree with him there too. So when we look at the Gaza war and how things are going today, I am very happy to see that the two governments are working together to deliver assistance to the Palestinian, Turkish assistance to Palestinians in Gaza in full coordination with the Egyptian government, with the full coordination of the Egyptian NGOs who are working there. Everything is coordinated, pre-coordinated, cleared. When I look back in 2009, I think Ambassador Şafak described, I don't want really to go to the past, but there, when Turkey gave up on its abstention of interfering in internal Arab politics, things went differently. So today, let us focus on the positive side. Today, we see full coordination. We see Turkish ships heading to Egypt, carrying tent hospitals and equipments, and fully coordinated with Egypt. And Egypt is fully coordinating it with Israel, and there is no effort to try to use this domestically for political purposes, because we could be harming the peace chances if we do that. The problem is always trying to look back to your own domestic politics and try to score points. And this is very important that we focus on the long term and the chances for peace. And like what Ambassador Şafak said, we both agree on how peace should look like. Two-state solution, Palestinian state on the 1967 borders, sharing Jerusalem as the capital of two states. East Jerusalem for the Palestinian state, and West Jerusalem is for Israel. And a sovereign, viable, and contiguous Palestinian state. So there too, we have agreement. And we have agreement with the rest of the Arabs on this. And we should not be shy about it. We should also use our contacts with Israel and with the United States and with the rest of the Western nations to try to promote this vision. What I would like to conclude with is really the area that is, I would say, somehow neglected in our cooperation, which is culture, people-to-people relationship when it comes to education. It is not explored to its full extent. You know that Turkish cultural products are very popular in Egypt. TV series and even literature is widely translated in Arabic. I don't see the same happening with Egyptian literary products and movies, TV series, and to tell you the truth, our main obstacle is translation. I don't see enough interests of bilinguists, Turks, who would help us produce these in Turkish language. And as you know, without being dubbed in Turkish or subtitled in Turkish, it will have no market in Turkey. So we need people and partners to work with us. I hope some of our viewers today have special interest in that. I will stop here. I took all my 15 minutes, so I will stop here. Thank you.
Ambassador, thank you very much. Now I will give the floor to Dalia Ziada, our only woman panelist. And I will briefly introduce her as well to you. So Dalia is the director of the MEEM Center for Middle East and Eastern Mediterranean Studies and Policy Support Group member at Diplomeds. Dalia is an award-winning Egyptian writer and author of The Curious Case of the Three-Legged Wolf, Egypt, Militarism, Islamism, and Liberal Democracy. She leads the Liberal Democracy Institute and the MEEM Center. Previously, Ziada held key roles at the Ibn Khaldun Center for Democratic Studies and the American Islamic Congress. And she is an expert at Diplomats and the Council for Mediterranean Diplomacy. Dalia today will be talking about an article she co-authored titled Putting Egypt-Turkey Relations on a Sustainable Footing. And Dalia, in the article, if you allow me, I'll read a short paragraph from that. You say that as officials navigate their way through the process of mending broken ties, it is essential to identify practical steps to capitalize on this diplomatic breakthrough. Sustainable peace can only be ensured by shifting the focus from political ideology to shared interests. One way to do this is by creating an inclusive, multi-track process that involves state institutions, businesses, non-governmental organizations, academics, and the grassroots. So please go ahead. I leave the floor to you, and if you can elaborate on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gulru, and everyone on the panel as the great ambassadors, and their interventions were very useful. And thank you also for bringing up our paper, because it was a really interesting project, because I wrote with Dr. Pinar Akpinar via Diplomeds. Our group actually was not only involved in writing the paper, but we were also involved in the process of the reconciliation that happened between Egypt and Turkey, which, thank God, we found it developing magically over the past year, despite a lot of delays and slowdowns that happened before that, mainly because of what you've just mentioned from our paper, the ideological differences between the two leaderships of Egypt and Turkey, the current leaderships. But what we are seeing today, and these ideological differences revolve mainly around how both sides perceive the role of political Islamism in politics, or the role of Islamist organizations in politics. And here, actually, the difference comes mainly from the fact that the weight or the word political Islamism in Turkey has a different meaning, and the word political Islamism in our Arab region has a completely different meaning. And from there came this contradiction. And also another issue of core ideological difference between the two countries was the issue of democratization, and how each of them values democracy versus maybe looking towards more of an authoritarian, not authoritarian, I would say more autocratic system of leadership. So we can say that the international pressures that are now happening, or the pressures that are now happening as a result of international and regional conflicts, are allowing or creating an urgency and an opportunity for collaboration between Egypt and Turkey beyond the complications of their ideological ideological differences of the leaderships, and beyond the many complexities actually of their bilateral relationship. And it's not only creating an area for collaboration on the regional context or even the international context, but also on their immediate bilateral relations in terms of economics, trade, military cooperation even, and also people-to-people cooperation, which is a very, or people-to-people communication, I mean, which is a very important aspect in this regard. I was in Cairo airport recently, and you would be surprised how many Turkish people were there coming just to enjoy Egypt as tourists. And I was really surprised, like, for the first time in many, many years, I can hear people talking Turkish around me. So it was a significant moment, I think. And the main and it's also very important, like a very important indication on how the people were yearning for this moment. We're waiting impatiently for the political conflicts to come to an end so they can really come together again. Because as we all know, there are a lot of cultural similarities between Egypt and Turkey that goes back to hundreds of years ago. So this is one aspect. But actually, speaking about the international conflicts that are now influencing or pushing the two countries to cooperate together, finally, I would like to focus more on the war now that's going on in Gaza, the Gaza crisis, I would say, because it actually created a new momentum, a whole new momentum for Turkey, and not only Turkey-Egypt relationship, but Turkey-Arab relationship. As Ambassador Abderahman was just saying, and also Ambassador Şafak was just saying, like, for many, many years, Arabs were always complaining about Turkish intervention in Arab affairs. Like, literally in every Arab League meeting, there must come, like, at the conclusion of every meeting, there must be this statement. It's like it has become a staple in each concluding a statement, like, we condemn Turkish involvement in Arab affairs. It's in everyone. And actually, it seems like also on the Turkish side, they have been also used to that, to the extent that they have been also preparing a response statement to this one. And it has become kind of, you know, kind of systematic process that should happen every year at the conclusion of Arab League meetings. But this time is different. This time, the Arabs and the Egyptians are calling upon Turkey to intervene, are calling upon Turkey to help with the humanitarian situation in Gaza, are calling upon Turkey to send aid materials. And we are seeing unprecedented, maybe not totally unprecedented, but I would say in the past 10 years, unprecedented cooperation on this issue. And I think also there is a great potential that the Turkish leadership and the Egyptian leadership can cooperate on finding a solution for the Israel-Palestinian conflict on the long run, and also for the current war in Israel. Of course, despite the interesting differences now also between the two leaders regarding their perception to Hamas, and also regarding to their perception to the importance of the Israeli relationship, and the general state of polarization that this Israel-Hamas war is now causing in the region in general. But there are certain points that the Turkish leadership and the Egyptian leadership agree on regarding the Israel-Palestinian conflict that they can build on for the future. One of it is the importance of ending the humanitarian crisis for the Palestinian people in Gaza, which I think everyone agrees on, even the Israelis themselves. And I've seen many Israeli academics and politicians even speaking about the importance of ending this humanitarian crisis. And also I've seen, like, plans or policies suggested by Israeli academics about what needs to be done for the Palestinian people in the future, which is a very important thing to highlight here. So we have an agreement on this point also between the Turkish and Egyptian leadership. Both of them have relatively good relationships with Hamas and Israel. Of course, recently we have seen the relationship, some tensions in the relationship between Israel and Turkey, but I'm sure as soon as this war comes to an end, things will be restored again. Both countries need each other very much, especially on the economic side. For example, in our paper that you've mentioned, Ms. Gulru, sorry.
It's a complicated name.
Gulru. Gulru, Miss Gulru, yeah. So in this paper actually that you've just mentioned, we wrote about a very interesting idea of cooperation, of a triangle of cooperation in the Eastern Mediterranean between Turkey, Israel, and Egypt that can, first of all, create a platform for Turkey to be once again involved in the Eastern Mediterranean conflict after years of being purposefully isolated. I'm sorry actually to say that, by other key actors in the region for several political reasons that Ambassador Şafak beautifully mentioned, but also it's now looking at this, the potential of this cooperation, which is very, very important for Turkey, Egypt, and Israel, and also for Europe and for the exportation of gas and solving the gas crisis that was caused by the Russia-Ukraine war recently. Now this idea or this potential is at risk. And it's at risk because of another war that erupted in our region, the current Israel-Hamas war. So it's important for Egypt and Turkey to find a way to continue, Egypt, Turkey, and Israel, to find a way to continue to cooperate on this without really making all these international and regional conflicts going on in our world and in our region affect this potential of cooperation. And also this takes me to other two very important points that we mentioned in our paper as well. One is about the issue of economic cooperation, which we are seeing is actually gaining a great momentum right now between Turkey and Egypt. Trade ministers are meeting on regular basis. There is high ambitions to increase the trade volume to $15 billion within 5 years. And I think both sides are so determined to make it happen. We are also seeing a great number of investors coming to Egypt, Turkish investors coming to Egypt, starting new factories. Actually, some of my relatives even started to work in Turkish factories recently, moving from factories that are owned by European and Chinese investors. So there's also another very important indication on how Turkey is now playing a growingly important role in the Egyptian economy, which I believe is good for both sides. The trade volume is also on an increase, and I think with the open relationships that are happening now, things will improve on much deeper level in the coming years, especially after this beautiful scene that we have been seeing in the past 2 weeks between President El-Sisi and Erdogan, like very friendly body language between them when they met at the Arab Islamic Summit, which for the first time, by the way, was not seen was not received by criticism, I would say, by Turkish and Egyptian audience. This time, they were very welcoming of this friendly relationship between President Erdogan and President El-Sisi, which takes us to a very important point here, which is the regional role that the two countries can play together, or the two leaderships, I would say, can play together in the current moment. One of the main defining aspects of the Turkish politics, Turkish foreign policy, and the Egyptian foreign policy has to do with their regional roles, or the regional roles that each of them can play. For Turkey, the Turkish leadership always views itself as the leader of the Islamic world. And actually, most of the people in the Islamic world worldwide look up at Turkey as a leader. At the same time, for Egypt, Egypt always looks at itself as a leader of Arabs. And historically, Egypt has always been the leader of Arabs and regional foreign policy in that regard. Recently, things are not the same anymore, but I think due to the current Israel-Hamas war, there is also a new momentum for Egypt to regain this role once again and come to the forefront. If we can join this Islamic leadership role that Turkey represents and this Arab leadership role that Egypt represents in the near future, I think we can do great things together for the good of the Middle East region and for the good of Islamic countries worldwide and can even influence or contribute to influencing other international conflicts like the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, for example. Also, finally here, also speaking about the regional role, if we look like west side towards North Africa, there is a very good potential for Egypt and Turkey to cooperate, as Ambassador Abderahman was beautifully mentioning. The issue in Libya, there is a lot of potential of cooperation between Turkey and Egypt and Libya. Both of them are heavily involved in Libya, either politically or even militarily. We can also capitalize on the potential of Libya, of the economic potential of Libya, which will eventually also serve the struggling economies of Turkey and Egypt. But one important aspect for all this to happen is that Turkey and Egypt need to help Libya get out of its political crisis that has been going on for over a decade now. And the good news here is that Turkey and Egypt agree on what needs to be done. They agree that a political solution needs to be applied, that both sides from the western and eastern of Libya needs to find a way to cooperate together and work or coexist, let's say, and they are determined to work on this. So I think this also will be a great area for cooperation between the two countries. Finally, I would like to conclude by a very important aspect that is not usually mentioned, which is the military cooperation between Turkey and Egypt. Both countries are very powerful when it comes to military power, I mean, and Turkey represents a very important source of armament for most of the Arab countries that actually can sell them high-tech arms, high technology arms, I mean, without with very little strings attached, unlike, for example, the weapons sold by Europe or the United States. They are usually attached with conditions related to human rights and democratization and so. But I think like getting or securing armament needs from Turkey would perhaps be easier for Arab countries, especially that Turkey now has become one of the top manufacturers of defense industrial products, not only in the region but worldwide. So this is one very important aspect of cooperation between the two countries. And I think recently there was an official invitation from the Egyptian Ministry of Defense Industries to their Turkish counterparts to come and participate in the Egyptian Defense Expo that will take place next month. So this also a very important indication on how things has improved to the extent that the Egyptian military and the Turkish military can now trust each other for future cooperation. So I think this is like basically the main points I wanted to speak about, and I look forward to discussing more.
Okay. Dalia, thank you very much for elaborating on the article as well as your thoughts on how to proceed with Turkey-Egyptian relations. Now, I will give 5 more minutes to each of our panelists, but in the meantime, I would like to ask our participants to start preparing their questions and especially indicating who they would like to pose that question to. So, Ambassador Göktürk, I will unmute you and ask you to. Yes, I think you can excellently talk now. Yeah, 5 minutes.
Thank you. I will try to respond very quickly, point by point, to the statements by Ambassador Salaheldin and Ms. Ziada. Now, economic cooperation, Turkey's economic involvement in the Middle East is the engine of its footprint. It has been the engine for the last several decades and will continue to be so in the years to come. So I totally agree with the ambassador that Turkish-Egyptian relations should be further expanded. When I took over as ambassador in late 2005, the Turkish investments in Egypt were a humble $60 million. By the time I left, towards the end of 2009, they were close to $3 billion US dollars, and it included a range of industries. They started with textiles, and then, as Ambassador Salaheldin has mentioned, it moved to automotives, manufacturing of buses and other vehicles, and also electronics. And I don't know how many times I made those visits to the industrial zones in Cairo or in Alexandria or elsewhere. Now, for regional cooperation, as expected, Libya has been raised as an area where Turkey and Egypt can cooperate instead of check each other's moves. I totally agree. And I also appreciate, also as an ambassador who has served in your beautiful country for 4 years, what security means from your west. The uncontrolled desert zones, which Egypt has to check, to keep an eye continuously. So if there is turmoil in Libya, it does impact on the Egyptian security. And if also an ideology is involved, it becomes even more so. So I totally agree. On the other hand, it should be the both countries, I'm sure, will come to terms with the fact that Turkey has long-standing interests, economic, political, and otherwise, in Libya in the decades to come. So I think proceeding on the basis of bilateral cooperation between Turkey and Egypt in furthering both countries' interests and security in Libya will be the right thing to do. Yes, when it comes to regional cooperation, I should also mention cooperating in the Eastern Mediterranean, also in the maritime field. We know that the agreement between the delimitation agreement between Egypt and Greece has certain implications also regarding Turkey's own claims in the area. But we also take note of Egyptian position regarding the island of Meis, Costello, tiny land just southwest of Turkey's Mediterranean the coastline, and international law has resolved similar issues elsewhere in the world. There are multiple examples, and all were resolved prioritizing the mainland. A small island should not be allowed to prevent a mainland country. A mainland in the sense that it constitutes the bulk of the Eastern Mediterranean, the Anatolian Peninsula, cannot be prevented from having its fair share in the maritime areas of Eastern Mediterranean. On the Middle East, yes, Turkey and Egypt can work even closer on both addressing the immediate the emergency needs, that is the humanitarian situation, the growing humanitarian situation, the tragedy in Gaza. And yes, both countries should come in a very forceful way, in a very determined fashion, to offer their gentle hand to the Palestinians at this juncture. But beyond that, Turkey and Egypt can play a very vital role in the resolution of the conflict. This is not to say that Turkey should act in the negotiating process itself, as Egypt will be involved, but regionally, the two countries should put their weight in the Eastern Mediterranean in a fashion that it will guarantee any peace that will emerge from a two-state negotiation. That is something that has to be followed up in the aftermath of the ongoing war in Gaza. Regional cooperation, of course, is a broader concept, and it is not limited to the Palestinian question. I would like to recall two anecdotes that I personally witnessed in the year 2003 when I was Deputy Director General for the Middle East. This was the beginning of January, and the Turkish Prime Minister then, Abdullah Gül, decided to make a shuttle trip to the regional capitals so that the impending war in Iraq could be in some fashion stopped, or at least its ramifications can be contained. So we started with Syria, but this was a time when the United States was putting pressure on Turkey, tremendous pressure, in fact, to secure its cooperation to open the northern front for its invasion of Iraq. And on the other hand, the Turkish economy was in shambles and was in need of fresh credit and structural support. So these two things made the regional countries, as well as many in Europe, conclude that Turkey was going to cave in some fashion to the American pressure. All of a sudden, Turkey came up with this proposal after that visit of the Prime Minister with a regional initiative called the Iraq's Neighbors Initiative. This was the result of this trip, and when we arrived in Cairo, accompanying the Prime Minister with a very nucleic delegation, we had already met with late President Mubarak in Sharm el-Sheikh, and then we flew to Cairo and visited the headquarters of the Arab League. Amr Musa welcomed the Prime Minister, and as we sat at the table, negotiating table, and while the press was still there, recording the opening segment of the meeting, he told our Prime Minister, "Thank you, Prime Minister. Turkey had turned its back. Now it's turning its face to the region." So this was the motto, in fact, of that very meeting. In fact, the impact of this initiative, led by Turkey at the time, made a more left a more abiding impression on the region than, say, the turning down of the motion for the cooperation with the United States in the Turkish parliament on the 1st of March of that year. So
Ambassador,
this
if you
was
can
the,
wrap up, sir, please.
yeah, sure. And also another example to regional cooperation. It was in the year 2008. Another meeting of the Arab League foreign ministers was taking place. It was the regular spring session. And I had also been there for the opening of that session and meeting many of the Arab foreign ministers whom I knew from my previous job back in the headquarters. And we were running for a non-permanent seat of the Security Council. And I came back to my office. Shortly afterwards, an envelope was delivered from the Arab League Secretariat to the embassy. I opened it, and it was informing us that the Arab League foreign ministers have unanimously approved to support the Turkish candidacy to the UN Security Council. because they knew that Turkey would take good care of their interests and security concerns as well. Let me stop here. There are many other points that I would like to respond and make my contribution to, but let me wait for the final round. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Göktürk. Ambassador Salaheldin, please, sir.
Well, I would follow the same pattern I did in the first round, agreeing with Ambassador Şafak in general, and especially when he cites examples about how the whole Arab world would support Turkey's looking to its own Middle Eastern neighborhood positively and without interfering in their domestic affairs. I cannot agree more actually with him on this. And the example that he cited is a very good example, because then the whole Arab states supported Turkey's candidature. There was another time later on, 10 years later, when Turkey tried to get the same seat on the Security Council, and I think most of the Arab states opposed it because of the Muslim Brotherhood factor and the interference in domestic affairs. So I agree wholeheartedly with what he said in this regard. On the maritime borders, and I also would like to look forward more than looking back. Looking forward, he recognized the fact that Egypt paid special attention to Turkish needs and interests when we made our agreement with Greece. We left undecided the areas that are of keen interest to Turkey. And we left it until Turkey and Greece resolve their differences. And there too, I see a great potential for diplomacy. And I think Egypt is uniquely qualified not to work out a demarcation agreement between Turkey and Greece and Cyprus, because this is almost impossible. I mean, it's more than 100 years old, and it is not really. I know that the Ambassador Şafak is a lawyer, but I am not, and I don't really believe that the law would resolve conflicts. We need really to change attitudes. So what I see. The model of the Lebanon-Israel agreement on splitting some gas fields in the Eastern Mediterranean, that was worked out with the help of the Americans, with the help of gas companies, with the help of Egyptians, Qataris, to come up with the alternative supplies, temporary ones, etc. I see something similar happening in the Eastern Mediterranean, and Egypt should play a key role there in mediating. We have very special relationship with Greece, with Cyprus, and now back with Turkey. And I think we can, and I always promoted in Egypt, in my talks, and both with officials and non-officials in Egypt, that we should play this role. As much as we would like the Turks to intervene on our behalf and try to solve our problems with Ethiopia, we would like also to intervene on their behalf and try to solve their problems with Turkey and Greece. And I'm not talking about the Lausanne Agreement or the 100 years old problems that will not be resolved overnight. But I'm talking about practical arrangements that would allow these three countries to somehow share resources that they have a conflict and fight about today. Maybe provisional agreements, but they could really be confidence-building measures and avoid a lot of conflict. Lastly, on the issue of Turkish regional approach. I think it would be greatly helpful if Turkey would focus more on coordination with Egypt and other interested Arab countries like Jordan, for example, maybe Saudi Arabia, on a potential Turkish role in supporting the day after Gaza war ends arrangement. I see a great potential for Turkey, for example. Turkey is the second or the third, the largest construction contractor in the world, maybe after the Chinese or so. So Turkey can play a major role in reconstructing Gaza, for example. This is with the Egyptian help and with coordination with Israel, with Saudi Arabia, with other donors countries. This is one thing that we can maybe a more controversial role is as a peacekeeper contributing country. Maybe I don't know how the Israelis would feel about Turkish contribution after the Turkish statement about Hamas. But anyhow, I see great potential of exploration, and if not government to government, we are private citizens, and we belong to organizations like Diplomeds and like your organizations. I think we can talk more together about this and present ideas to our governments. How can Egypt and Turkey work together toward a more peaceful solution and to help Gaza move back to a normal life? So this is a great area of cooperation. I'll stop here.
Ambassador, thank you very much. And now, Dalia, I'll give you 5 minutes, and then we have quite a few questions. So, and I know that Ambassador Salaheldin has to leave at 6:30 sharp because he has another obligation at 7. So, Dalia, please go ahead, and then
I will be very quick. I promise.
From Ambassador Salaheldin, so he can answer his questions first, if it's okay for the rest of the panelists. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'll be short and quick. So actually, I will simply focus on the last points that Ambassador Abderahman has just mentioned, which making or giving policy recommendations to leaders in Egypt and Turkey on how to cooperate together in Gaza, because I think it's the most pressing issue right now. And I believe we should not wait until the day after the war. Both sides have a very important role to start doing from now, not just after the war. And it's not limited to only humanitarian aid, but they can use their political leverage and influence on the key sides of the conflict, the Israeli side and the Hamas organization, to help keep things moving on in terms of ceasefire, the release of the Israeli hostages that are now under Hamas grip, securing better circumstances for the Palestinian people in Gaza, and ensuring that the bloodshed in Gaza will stop sooner than later, while we know, like, this should happen with the understanding that this conflict is not coming to an end anytime soon. And it will, unfortunately, it's very highly expected that it will continue for more than a year or so. I remember people 1 year ago with saying that the Russia-Ukraine war will end within a few months, but it didn't. It's still going on, and thus the Israel-Hamas war that we are watching today will still going on for a while. The issue of the reconstruction of Gaza, I think Turkey and Egypt, due to their geographic locations, can very well cooperate later on in the future with Israel on, first of all, reconstructing Gaza in terms of physical reconstruction of buildings and making it a city that humans can live in once again, but also with preparing the Palestinian Authority to take the lead over Gaza once again. Turkey and Egypt can play a very important role with the Palestinian Authority on this issue after Hamas is removed from, because eventually we know, like, sooner or later Hamas will be removed from the leadership of Gaza. So who is coming next? This is a very important question that Turkey and Egypt and other key players in the region, by the way, need to work on from now, not wait until what will happen after the war ends. We know the war is very overwhelming, but a diplomatic parallel track should be progressing in line with the ongoing war, no matter how long it takes. Just one quick plus point is Turkey in the Eastern Mediterranean. Of course, no one likes to see Turkey isolated in the Eastern Mediterranean. Yani, when you say Eastern Mediterranean, the first thing that comes to your mind is simply Turkey. The Eastern Mediterranean is literally Turkey. With this, it's the country with the greatest or the largest, the longest border in the Eastern Mediterranean. But we have also to look into the reasons why it was isolated, why it was purposefully isolated from the East Med Gas Forum, why it was purposefully isolated from all the economic initiatives that has taken place in this region before. It was mainly because of policies that did not serve Turkey's interest as well. So I think if Turkey do some reforms on these policies, which we have seen it doing this already over the past 2 years, we for sure will see much progress happening in Turkish inclusion in one way or another in all the economic and political initiatives that are happening in the region.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Ambassador Salaheldin, if you allow me, I'll ask you there are 2 questions posed to you. I'll ask them one after another, and if you can answer them. So one is from a fellow Kerkuki, Ershad Hürmüzlü. He says, do you think that a part of the politicians, the societies like the Arab-Turkish Dialogue Association can do something or take any initiatives in this regard? There is one more question that is addressed to you. Is there a possibility to operationalize the Arab gas pipeline as a means to establish a trade-based stable relationship among Turkey, Israel, and Egypt in the future, irrespective of Syria's current conditions? Please go ahead, Mr. Ambassador.
Well, I'm very happy to answer both questions, but especially the first question coming from my dear friend Ershad Hürmüzlü, who is actually the organizer and the host of the Bosphorus Summit that I am participating in today. And it is one of the fora that where Arabs and Turks come together and address the Arab-Turkish cooperation. And yes, I answer him affirmatively, definitely. We can now look into reviving all kinds of Turkish-Arab dialogue fora, the official ones and the informal and non-official one as well. And they can definitely play a major role in the cultural, educational aspects that I mentioned in my first round presentation, but they can also play a role in presenting constructive idea. For example, tomorrow we are going to have a panel about the conflict resolution in general, in our region in general. But there are Turkish and Arab participants who are going to speak, and I'm going to be one of them. And each would present ideas on how to deal with current conflicts and how to work together, Arabs and Turks, to resolve them. I have my own ideas that I published about the Gaza war, how to end it and how to move from an end of Gaza war to a start of a peace process with the end in sight, the political horizon. But I'm looking forward to hear also Turkish ideas and other Arab ideas, and we can put our heads together and present them to our governments and our public. So I wholeheartedly value those kind of effort and coordination, both on the governmental and non-governmental level. As far as the second question is concerned, this is actually, it reminds me of something I forgot to mention when I mentioned the Lebanese model. What is interesting about the Lebanese model of splitting gas fields with Israel, how the agreement stipulated for a makeup for the Lebanese for the gas until they have production in their own fields. For about 5 years, they are going to get Egyptian gas. And this Egyptian gas is going to come via the Arab pipeline, which is going from Egypt to Jordan, then to Syria, and then to Lebanon. And it could possibly and very easily connect to the Turkish grid lines, to the gas pipelines in Turkey. Actually, we had only missing about 100 kilometers, 100 to 110 kilometers before the war in Syria. And it is quite possible, if we have a settlement in Syria and if we have stability in Syria that would allow us to rebuild this pipeline, we could be really sharing the gas resources through this Arab pipeline, not only with Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, but with Turkey as well, because there is great potential of Syria's gas, both on the territory of Syria and of its shelf in the sea. So great potential for cooperation in the gas area, and that would not exclude Turkey. I like what Dalia said about why Turkey was excluded. This is why I feel safe in the hands of Ambassador Şafak and Dalia. After I leave in 5 or 10 minutes, I will be very well represented there. But I can take one more question if there is any question for me.
Let me check, Ambassador. We have quite a few questions. There are Dalia and Ambassador Göktürk. Well, there's one question. Do you think recent meeting of Egypt and Turkey's presidents will do something good regarding trade relations?
Well, I'm afraid with this, we don't need presidents even to meet. It is going very well. Before coming here, I attended the Turkish-Egyptian Business Association, and we received quite a large delegation of Turkish business people coming with their trade minister, and they met with our president. But they really don't need at all the two presidents to decide anything on their own. They are building new industrial zones, Turkish industrial zones, almost everywhere in Egypt, in the south, in the north, and they are opening up new investments. And the good thing about it is that the Turkish businesses that are in Egypt are our best advocates for more Turkish businesses to come in. So we don't need to do any promotion as far as Egyptian government is concerned. It is actually the Turkish businesses that are doing this, because they are reporting quite large profits. And what the governments need to do actually is to encourage those businesses to invest into new areas. And this is why I cited the electric cars, for example, environmentally friendly industries, because we have traditional industries. We have factories for buses factories. We have factories, textiles. We have other things that are all, of course, gas-based cooperation. But we can look into things that are environmentally friendly and try to develop our own capacities, both of us. And there too, I second what Dalia said about military to military cooperation. There is great potential for co-production. And President El-Sisi, when he was a Minister of Defense, he visited Istanbul in 2013. And there, before, of course, the political rift between the two countries. And there was agreements for more than $200 million of joint production and exports and exchange of expertise, maintenance, overhauls of weapons and the weapon system, all kinds of things. And of course, they were frozen because of the political rift. We should revive them now. We should go back and talk about them. So there too, with this, may I say that I thank you all very much, especially our hosts and our great moderators. Thank you, Gulru Hanem, for your great effort, and thank you my co-speakers, Ambassador Şafak and Dalia. And I feel very safe with your hands. You represent me as much as I represent myself. Thank you. And I'm really sorry that I need to leave. It's for a good cause. Okay.
Ambassador Salaheldin, thank you very much for attending our webinar. And we hope to see you back soon, not in 10 years. So I hope you have a great stay in Istanbul. Thank you, sir. Good evening.
Bye-bye. Good evening.
I will continue with the other questions. Let's see, yes. There's Ambassador Göktürk. There's one question for you, sir, which is not directly related to Egypt-Turkey relations, but I will pose the question. What is the potential impact of the ongoing conflict between Israel and Hamas on the Turkish Armed Forces' proposal to acquire F-16 fighter jets from the United States Department of Defense? Go ahead, sir.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I've seen the question. In fact, I have gone through all the questions, and in my last round, I will try to address them as much as possible. For that specific question, the F-16 thing, I think the United States and Turkey will keep the Gaza war beside the issue of the delivery of those airplanes and modernization kits. So I don't think that it will eventually have a meaningful effect or any effect at all on the ongoing talks. Returning to the bilateral and the regional picture, let me just agree with Ms. Ziada. I have many points that I agree with her, but this one is particularly important that I wish to share with the participants and the followers of this panel discussion. She said even in political Islam, in fact, I don't use the term political, I find it redundant. Islamist is sufficient to describe the ideology. And she said that this is understood differently in the Arab world and in Turkey. I totally agree. In fact, the birth of the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamist movement in the Arab fold, and given the centrality of Egypt and its spread to all other countries in the geography, it was mainly in reaction to the change of the imperial power in the region. And secondly, in 1924, when Turkey abrogated the caliphate. So it was basically in 1928 when Hasan al-Banna started this movement with his initial writings. The essence of what he said was about owning the Arab future, owning the Arab fate. So they had to, everyone in the Arab world at the time was looking for some element, some basis of identity, because the countries were so backward generally, so they had to stick to some cultural basis to proceed. And for Hasan al-Banna, the choice was religion itself. In Turkey, it was influenced by the Muslim Brotherhood and especially Sayyid Qutb's discipline, the writings. But it has otherwise the Turkish Islamism has its own authentic origins. Also looking for a new unifying identity when the empire was disintegrating, the final phases of the empire. And also during the Republican era, this was the effect of the people who emerged basically from the religious orders, from the two main strains of religious orders. About the Arab gas pipeline, we had many meetings when I was in Cairo. And as Ambassador Salaheldin has accurately described, it would flow through Egypt, Lebanon, Syria, and then would reach Turkey. And it was some 100+ kilometers of pipeline that was to be completed between the two countries. At that time, in the late 2000s, the problem was about the scarcity of the source in Egypt. Now that has changed. Now you have it in abundance, because even at that time you were importing gas also from Israel to meet your daily demands. Now that picture has changed, but the geopolitics are different. So that has to be addressed now. Hopefully, in the years to come, it will be possible for these four countries to discuss and realize that Arab gas pipeline project, because this will be another alternative to bringing your gas to the north. About the leadership for the Islamic world, I never believed that Turkey would be the leader of the Islamic world. Look, Islam, from my own experience and from my own readings and from my own contacts with many Arabs, not limited to officials, my conclusion is that Islam is our common religion which divides us. We have to understand that this should not interfere with our state-to-state relations at any time. If we accept Islam as we accept and live it, exercise it, feel it in our households, then there will be no problem. Ambassador Salaheldin made a very pertinent point, which I missed to respond in my first intervention. He said education, Arabic language. Yes, I was proposing that when I was ambassador in Egypt, because the Arabic speakers in Turkey are usually from the religious schools. And this is not a sufficient kind of Arabic education that people can easily perform their different professions using their knowledge of Arabic. So we have to have droves of Turkish students studying in Egyptian universities. It can be engineering, political sciences, or anything, but in Arabic, so they learn the real thing, how to communicate, how to perform in the real world, and in pursuit of their professions. So let me see if I have missed anything else. Well, I think this is basically it. Thank you.
Ambassador, thank you very much. Dalia, there are two questions addressed to you. And of course, if you want to respond to the comments of Ambassador Göktürk, you're more than welcome. I'll read them out loud to you, one after the other. So the first one is, what roles do the military play in the foreign policy decisions of Egypt and Turkey, and how does it affect their relationship? This is the first one. And the second one is, what dynamics critically influence Turkey's and Egypt's capacity to urgently assume a mediator or facilitator role together in the Israeli-Hamas conflict in the short term? Please go ahead, Dalia.
Right, thank you, Gulru. So I will start with this. Okay, before addressing the two questions, I want to very quickly comment on the F-16 issue between Turkey and the US. Although that question was not directed to me, but it's one of my favorite topics. So actually, I think the issue is mostly related again to things that does not has to do with the current conflict in the region, but mainly to Turkey's policies that the United States saw offensive somehow, and thus decided to use one of its cards of military cooperation to play with Turkey, I mean, or to try to influence Turkey in this regard. I completely disagree with that, and I don't think like NATO partners should do this to each other. And the issue actually goes back even to a deeper, I mean, to deeper, not deeper, but previous and similar incidents when the US decided to use its military leverage inside the NATO to play these cards with Turkey, which is a rising also military power. It is the second largest army in the NATO, actually. So it's somehow has to do with the complexity of the relationship between the US and Turkey and their competitions within the NATO more than it has to do with our region, I mean. The question about the dynamics that Turkey and Egypt should look for to use in their potential role in the Gaza crisis, I think there are many ways that the two countries should work together now, or the two states should explore now. One of them is that Egypt needs to learn from Turkey's experience regarding the influx of refugees and how to do with them. Several years ago, after the Arab Spring, Turkey experienced a similar crisis on its borders, somehow similar to what Egypt is facing now. And it can actually help Egypt a lot. It was, of course, more complicated and much bigger, but it can provide Egypt with knowledge, the know-how on how to manage the current crisis of refugees, either from Sudan or now from Gaza. This is one important aspect. Another important aspect is the political leverage that both sides have over the conflicting sides and their ability to intervene for or mediate for ceasefire. Although, as we can see, the potential of ceasefire is not ceasefire is not expected to happen anytime soon now. There is an international pressure, and also, by the way, a regional pressure. Yani, I always argue that the fact that most of the Arab countries now in the region does not want, including those who have very good relationship with Israel, does not want to intervene with Israel to end the war and apply ceasefire, is that they also want to see Hamas go. They want to see Hamas finished, honestly. So somehow they are turning their heads away, waiting until Israel finishes Hamas, sort of, so they can then intervene to reconstruct Gaza and rebuild life in Gaza again. So keeping this in mind, I think Egypt and Turkey can prepare for the ceasefire initiative later on, but right now, the priority should be given to humanitarian cooperation, to making sure there will be control of the bloodshed and so on. Regarding the military cooperation between the two countries, yes, the potential is very, very high. Look at the geographic locations of the two countries, at the gates of Africa and the Middle East, and also at the gates of Europe. The military bases they control, also the fact that they own the largest two militaries in the Middle East, and the advanced defense industrial capabilities of Turkey combined with, or if it would be combined with also the need of the Egyptian armament market and the capacity, the strong capacity building in the Egyptian military. So and also the role that they can play in securing the Eastern Mediterranean and managing all the security threats in this region, not only the Middle East, but also the Eastern Mediterranean. So all these are points that the two militaries can cooperate on. But and by the way, there was an incident of military cooperation between Egypt and Turkey. This was only in 2012, I think. this was perhaps the first joint military exercise between the two countries. And I think now with the rapprochement process being successful and reconciliation has already been accomplished, there would be great potential for seeing more and more naval exercises and joint military exercises between the Turkish and the Egyptian military in the near future.
I think Ambassador Göktürk wants to respond to that. There's one more question, because we said that the webinar would be around an hour and a half, and some of our participants are starting to leave. So before I give the floor to Ambassador Göktürk to respond to you, Dalia, I want to pose this last question to both of you and get your comments on it. So the question is, how do you address a common challenge such as water scarcity or refugee crisis? Ambassador, so I would like to have your comments and your comments on this question, sir. Please go ahead. Buyurun. Yes.
To reinforce what Ms. Ziada has said previously, she said that now it becomes an even more pressing need for the two countries to cooperate regionally. Last year when Russia invaded Ukraine, I wrote in one of my articles that geopolitics have a disciplining effect on countries. When such things occur, countries become more prudent in their moves, which would otherwise, which would in different times would give them the liberty to cross sometimes their boundaries. So this very element of a major crisis erupting in the middle of the region does discipline the countries in a favorable sense on the need to cooperate more closely as partners or as allies, as was the case for Europe within the framework of the NATO alliance. So yes, this latest Gaza war may have an effect on the two countries' closer collaboration in working together to contain and eventually improve the security situation in the wider region. On cooperating in matters like a refugee crisis or the water crisis, I think these, as far as the water issue is concerned, the irrigation system, the river systems will have to be assessed on their own merits. I have taken particular note of Mr. Ambassador Salaheldin's remarks concerning the Renaissance Dam of in Ethiopia. I know how crucial the proper sufficient flow of the Nile water is for the survival of Egypt in many senses, and the same applies, of course, to our region. And these issues can be cooperated to the extent the parties find a commonality of ground. As for the refugee crisis, I think this has more to do with the ways of avoiding it. So if you have less political crises, less turmoil in the region, there will be less people trying to cross the Mediterranean and try to reach Europe. But of course, in the case of Egypt and in the case of Turkey, we have different sources of new refugees, different sources of population movements. We can coordinate to the extent they intersect. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Dalia, if we can get your comments on the question, and then there is one comment Ambassador Ayşe Sezgin has sent. I will read that out loud, and then we'll end the session.
Yeah, great. So actually, I will Speaking about the water crisis, I think we have a very successful example of distillation of water, which is in our region, which is Israel. And I think if Turkey and Egypt can cooperate with Israel on this, in addition, of course, to cooperation with other issues like the gas. And so this will help tremendously with this crisis, especially now that we are seeing in Egypt's case, for example, Ethiopia has been going on with the building of the GERD, the Grand Renaissance Dam, and filling the dam without caring for any intervention from any party or any mediation from any party, and even without caring for Egypt or Sudan national interests. So I think we should look for alternative ways to solve this problem, and one of them is looking at the experience of Israel and even seeking cooperation with Israel in this regard. The other issue about the refugees, which is very, very critical right now with all the conflicts that are happening in the region. If you look on the map around Egypt, from all the three sides, literally, there are conflicts that are letting unprecedented number of refugees to come into the country. Look at Turkey also in the map, at least from its southern borders, there are many conflicts that are going on that also allowing or inciting or encouraging a lot of refugees to get into Turkey. So the problem is common. And I think Turkey has more experience on this issue that needs to transfer to Egypt somehow and help Egypt understand how to deal with this crisis economically and also from a humanitarian point of view, which is very critical. And also Egypt can very much help also with Turkey's policies regarding the refugees that come from Arab countries. Again, thanks to Egypt's maybe regional role, the fact that the Arab League exists in Cairo, and all these factors can somehow contribute to Egypt playing a role in managing the refugees crisis that's also affecting Turkey somehow. Speaking about the people who are now fleeing Egypt to Europe via the Mediterranean Sea, as Ambassador Şafak was mentioned a few minutes ago, yes, it's very critical. And I think one way to stop this is by solving the problem in Libya. And Turkey and Egypt agree on what needs to be done in Libya, elections, the political solution, and everything. So they should give a priority to that to avoid more immigration and refugee-related crises.
Excellent. Dalia, thank you very much. I'll read Ambassador Ayşe Sezgin's comments. She was our ambassador to Slovenia, to Austria, as well as to Malta. She was also a deputy undersecretary. She says, Ms. Ziada mentioned that Turkey should change its policies in the Eastern Mediterranean. Ambassador Salaheldin said that they had good relations with Greece and the Greek Cypriot administration. Maybe it would be logical to advise them to be more reasonable as regards their position in the Eastern Mediterranean. The argument from Greece seeking exclusive economic zone for its islands in the Mediterranean has created this tension. Ambassador Göktürk mentioned that the island of Meis, it's an island 2 nautical miles from mainland Turkey, whereas 360 nautical miles from mainland Greece. Its surface is only 10 square kilometers. So this is especially for our participants that are not fully aware of the technicalities of the issues between the Aegean issues between Turkey and, this is my comment, by the way, Turkey and Greece. Greek side claims that this island should acquire 440,000 square kilometers of maritime jurisdiction area, which will trap Turkey to the Bay of Antalya. Therefore, a new approach is needed from Greece in this very sensitive issue. She says that she wanted to clarify this. I thank Ambassador Ayşe Sezgin for her comments. And I would like to thank our panelists. Obviously, there's a lot of areas of potential cooperation between Turkey and Egypt. We do have differing views, but dialogue is essential. And even this webinar shows that we should be doing more of these events. I would like to thank our collaborators, Ankara Policy Center, the director Fatih Ceylan, GTF and Diplomeds and our participants. Thank you. We exceeded our time a little bit, and thank you very much for your patience, and hope to see you at another event. Thank you. Good evening to all.